So, hello everyone, hello Choir of the Earth, and we are so thrilled to welcome Charles Mutter here, who has been our violinist for the Lark Ascending. Charles, so good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure to have been part of this extraordinary project, and I'm really thrilled, and I can't wait to see the finished result.
Well, thank you ever so much. And just to say right at the start, how absolutely thrilled we are that you've played for us. We've spent the day today recording this on the first day of the Lark Ascending course, and the reaction has just been amazing. The choir love your playing, and they're really, really thrilled with the way it's all coming together. So we've got some work ahead this week. We're beavering away to learn the notes, but we're off to a great start. Thanks so much.
Wow,
Brilliant.
it's. I mean, if you'd asked me before I heard this vocal arrangement if I could imagine such a thing existing, I'd have probably said no. But I mean, it is so. It is such a clever piece of work, and the beautifully subtle way that the Meredith poem
Mm.
sort of gets integrated into it rather than just being sort of written up at the top of the score. I think it's just incredible, and of course the the voices, wordless or otherwise, I mean, perfectly suit Vaughan Williams's sort of
Mm.
long lines and
Mm.
sort of drifting harmonies. It's just an incredible thing.
Well, I'm just, as I say, just so glad that you're playing for us. I mean, you obviously, it's fair to say you know the work rather well. When did you first encounter the lark?
Okay, so I think my parents bought me the sheet music when I was about 12 or 13, and I was nowhere near
Mm.
being ready to play it at that age. I mean, very sweet of them, and sort of, but it kind of. I mean, I remember sort of trying it and just thinking, no, this is just impossible. I'm never going to be able to play this. And then I sort of came back to it intermittently, sort of over over the next few years, and then put it to one side. And then dear Stephen Clearbury, who sadly left us a few years ago now, asked me to play it with in his Cambridge Summer Music Festival in King's Chapel, and of course I said yes because I basically say yes to everything, and then thought, oh heavens, I'd better learn it, and it was such a joy, of course, to sort of rediscover the piece and to I mean, especially to be able to play it in such an extraordinary space as King's Chapel with such a marvellously sensitive musician as Stephen Clearbury. And that kind of got me properly onto the Lark journey, if you like. And then I've played it a few times with my regular orchestra, the BBC Concert Orchestra. We did it on a schools tour, and they said, "Oh, well, we need you to do a sort of 3 minute version of it because obviously the children aren't going to be able to concentrate." And I said, "Absolutely not. You can, okay, I don't mind cutting a little bit of it out, but they're absolutely going to have the long, unaccompanied cadenza at the end." You could have heard a pin drop in every single school we went into. I mean, I mean, obviously, it's an incredible thing, and yeah, so I did, yeah, and I played it on In Tune, and yeah, I think no, it's been a really significant part of my life, certainly for the last sort of 10, 15 years. It just keeps giving.
I think
It's
that
that
comes
sort of
across
piece.
in your performance. It really does. There is if you don't mind me saying, there is a kind of a combination of assuredness and confidence that comes with knowing the work really well, but still the sensitivity to Vaughan Williams' phrasing. I think that the love that you have for the piece
Mm.
really does shine through. I think it'd be easy when you've been playing a piece for 10, 15 years to sort of go through the motions a little bit, but I never
Mm.
get that impression from this piece.
Oh no, I can't. I can't imagine that happening. No. Um, it is. Yeah, it is extraordinary. I mean, it's the score is a it's a nice balance of things incredibly precisely written out and actually leaving quite a lot to your imagination and to chance. Composers are often either one or the other,
Mm.
but I mean, one of the extraordinary things about the piece is the way is how sort of precisely Vaughan Williams sort of notated birdsong in effect,
Mm. Mm.
and sort of long before Messiaen or more famous birdsong exponents were doing it, and yet, yet you still need to find the direction and the pacing and the phrasing yourself in a way. But he definitely gives you all the clues.
Mm. No, absolutely. And I was saying to the choir this morning as we listened to, I said it was the Lark Ascending, the launch of the Lark, which is a different sort of take on the ascent, but the fact that there are so many shapes that are described so beautifully within the music. You have the opening cadenza, of course. You have a free section in the middle, and then the beautiful ending. And I said, from our point of view, we need to consider that we're meeting the lark very, very briefly, in a fleeting sort of sense. The lark flies
Sure.
alongside us. We soar with the lark as a choir, and then we watch as it flies off at the end. And the freedom, I think, is a huge part of that sense that you can't keep this bird to yourself. It is part of nature, and the music reflects that.
Yeah, well, that's a really beautiful image, and yeah, they are extraordinary. I mean, the so often you can't actually see them, of
Mm.
course. You just sort of hear them, and then you sort of strain to see a tiny dot. I did once. I've seen a lark on the ground. I mean, in perfect health. I
Good,
hasten to
good,
add.
good.
I was walking
Glad
along
to hear
the
that.
North Devon cliffs, and I mean, face to face. Well, about 15 feet away, but yeah, I mean, they're just such extraordinary
That
creatures.
must have actually been quite a magical moment for you,
It
having
really was. Yeah,
played the music so often, and suddenly to meet
yeah,
a real lark face to face. That's
exactly.
absolutely wonderful. Now, look, we've been chatting obviously about this piece for some time, and I just want to kind of fill the choir in a little bit of the behind the scenes, the work that went into
Mm,
creating this recording. And you and I first spoke a few months ago on the phone, and
sure.
I have to say I'm just so grateful to you for being so open minded to all of this. This is obviously very different to the way you'd normally play the lark, and as
Well,
I recall, well, certainly in the way that we've taken your recording and then added in voices later on. It's not the usual way to do it. And
sure.
I remember saying to you that I really wanted the lark to be as free as you could be, and that I wanted you to record your part in entirely as you would want to, and then we would fit the voices to it. So, can you just fill the choir in on the recording day? How did things work with Richard and Connor and yourself?
Okay, so what we did, I mean, I'd done a few projects, particularly during lockdown, helpfully, that were maybe sort of slightly comparable to this. I mean, things like Strauss's Morgan and Beim Schlafengehen with a lovely soprano I work with and piano accompaniment, and obviously for those we were in our three separate houses. Um, but I knew that any kind of click track for the Lark would be a non-starter
Hmm.
because you just can't. I mean, even for the bits that are accompanied, it's just it wasn't going to be right. and so, well, fortunately, I have a decent Yamaha electric piano, and so Richard, who played the piano reduction of the orchestral score so beautifully for Fieri to make their guide track from, he he had headphones on, so he could hear himself playing the piano. I had single-sided headphones on, so I could hear him playing the piano, and I could, of course, hear myself playing the violin. He could sort of hear me playing the violin, but I mean, he's brilliant, so I think he's telepathic. So
We all know how
that,
brilliant Richard
that,
Gowers is. Nothing
that
more
was
needs to be said on the subject. Yes,
that was
absolutely.
fine. And so, essentially, Connor was able to record the piano without the piano being heard on my violin recording. And that, of course, you can only do with an electric instrument.
Absolutely.
And thankfully, it didn't mean that I had to play an electric violin. I mean,
No.
I have nothing against electric violins. I've used them a lot, but again, it wouldn't have been quite right.
No,
for Lark.
it really wouldn't.
So,
and this meant that obviously
yeah.
the performance that you gave, one of the reasons I think it works so well, the flow is so good, is that it's entirely guided by you as the Lark. And the Fieri have come along, and as we were just saying before we hit record, they've done an incredible job.
Just stunning. And they make everything sound so natural. I mean, all the sort of whether it's the dreamy accompanying stuff, or where the orchestra sort of take over and they're
totally
suddenly the thing. Yes,
and as I have said this many times on this YouTube channel, and I will say it again, the Fieri Consort are the best in the world at what they do, which is to produce these guide tracks completely in isolation. You never would have known that not a single member of that group met in the creation of that guide. It's all them recording in their houses, all mixed, and it's just, it's absolutely amazing. And they've done all sorts of things for us. We're just about to, just a little aside, we're about to have the premiere of our recording of the Mozart C minor Mass, which they did the guides for us, and the Carl Jenkins Armed Man. We're starting the Delius Mass of Life next week, and there really is, I don't want to overdo it, but there really is, I don't think anything they can't do. So I'm so thrilled you like the end result, or at least actually it's not the end result, is it? It's the sort of intermediate result.
Exactly, yeah.
And then Choir of the Earth is going to record their parts, and we'll have something even more beautiful.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And what I'd love to do, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to invite you in to one of the mixing sessions. Because I think, for one thing, you'll find it really fascinating to hear all the parts come together. And I really do want you to be as involved as you're happy to be in the final mix. Because, as the Lark, I want to make sure that you feel that it is ascending appropriately.
Well, I would love that. And obviously, the nature of things is that it doesn't matter where in the world I happen to be at the time.
Exactly. It's all done over Zoom, and just an hour of your time when it's pretty much there, and we'll get you to have a little listen and give us some feedback. Now, we've been talking about the origins of the Lark, and I've just saying to you that the premiere, the very first performance of this, was given just 2 or 3 miles down the road from where I am here in Bristol, in the Shirehampton Public Hall, and you were talking about the lady for whom the piece was written.
Well, her story is really quite extraordinary. I mean, she was the daughter of a professional harpist, which obviously in the late 19th century outside of London meant pretty much no money. And she was offered, somebody spotted her, and she was offered a scholarship to the Royal Academy, I think it was, and couldn't even afford to take a scholarship, and then more people sort of discovered her, Vaughan Williams being one of them, and they managed to sort of club together and get her enough money to study with this extraordinary professor in Prague.
So just to clarify, this lady's name's Marie Hall, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, she had she went on to have a really stellar career as a soloist in the days when orchestras were still pretty much at least 99% male. And Vaughan Williams wrote this for her. And one of the things that I find endlessly fascinating about the Lark Ascending is that he started it before the First World War, and then went off to become an ambulance driver and saw all the nameless horrors, and then came back and finished it. And I believe two things happened. The piece got quite a lot slower, and the violin part got much more complicated with more birdsong. And so I think the two things are kind of, I can well imagine that the getting slower thing is to do with the piece sort of swinging round from being a gentle pastoral English thing to something much more sort of darkly nostalgic for something for a way of life that wasn't going to come back. But on the other hand, you've got this astonishing musician who he's found and who can make his piece, which has gained in so much sort of emotion and complexity, who can really realise this and make it something even more extraordinary. So I think the sort of combination of the two is really, really exciting. And she must have been an extraordinary violinist.
Yeah, well, I read what you were saying about her success. At one point, she was the highest paid musician in the country.
Yeah.
She was absolutely top of her game. I see exactly why Vaughan Williams wanted her for the Lark. And she actually, again, just reading up about it, he didn't just write it for her. She very much helped him finish it off, didn't she?
Completely, yeah. And she absolutely started from nothing. She wasn't I mean, sort of the opposite of Born with a Silver Spoon in her mouth. It's just a wonderful story.
So just from the point of view of someone who knows the Lark really well, has played it, what do you think would have been the sections? Just thinking now about the techniques that involved in playing this piece, what do you think would have been some of the sections that Marie Hall would have expanded upon, would have given Vaughan Williams a kind of a... Well, in what way do you think Marie Hall expanded the Lark technically?
I think, unfortunately, I don't think there's a pre-version that we can see. I don't think a sort of pre-war Lark. I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't think it exists. But so the changes we know about from letters and things like that. But I think certainly, I mean, if you compare it with, I mean, I'm trying to. I mean, his earlier string writing in things like the Fantasia on Thomas Tallis, which is a few years earlier. The little solos in things like the Wasps Overture, which are lovely but don't particularly tax you.
No.
I think, certainly she would have been going, no, look, I've got a 4-octave range, use it.
Yeah.
And also the sort of power and steeliness that comes from requiring the violinist to play in octaves or other sort of chord formations. I mean, certainly from my point of view and everybody else I know that plays this piece, I mean, those are the few bars that you keep coming back to and you just need to sort of keep working at them because they never get any easier.
No.
But yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's actually more than chords in a couple of passages. It's actually two-part counterpoint we're that we're required to do, and to sort of keep two equal voices going, and that hadn't really been seen in violin music.
Not since Bach,
not since
anyway.
Bach.
Yeah.
I mean, because all sort of virtuoso writing that sort of developed in the 19th century, it was much more to do with sort of flying around in single lines. And I mean, Paganini would have you double stopping, but it would sort of be just moving in the same direction, generally speaking. I mean, there's a few bits, but I think, yeah, I can very easily imagine her kind of going, look, no, you can do this. You don't have to sort of give one part to someone in the orchestra. I can actually do this by myself.
And it adds so much, doesn't it, to have the violin suddenly doubling its sound, and in many ways, and actually more so because it's of course resonating with itself. It suddenly leaps forward and grabs the attention when you start playing those octaves, and that sublime moment where you come in on the double stopped chord, which then just sort of flutters down and it's just sublime. I was saying to the choir, the first time I ever heard this played live was actually by a fantastic youth orchestra. It was the Bromley Youth Orchestra, and my then girlfriend was playing in it, and she said, come along and hear it. And I'd heard of the piece, and I'd heard a recording of it, but it wasn't a very good one. And I was sat there, and the thing that's really grabbed me, and I think one of the things that I love about the Fieri recording is it does this as well, the resonances between that are created by the stacked fifths and fourths, of course, throughout a big hall played on the by a big orchestra. It's almost overwhelming. It's really rich and enveloping, and one of the things that really excites me is actually getting that same effect from all of our voices all joined together, because of course, as you know, all the individuals in Choir of the Earth are going to record their parts on their own in their houses with their phones, with their tablets, but then when we mix it all together, we're going to be going for as much of that sympathetic resonance and general kind of presence than you get from a string orchestra. And the double stopping just adds so much to that.
Yeah, it really does, and it's always kind of hard to explain. I mean, certainly that bit you've just cited, the sort of fifth sort of trickling down. I mean, I mean, if it's, I mean, when it comes off, it's incredible. Any composition teacher would say, "Don't do that. Violins can't do that. Don't do that." But yeah, there's no other way of creating that effect. Nothing else sounds like. I mean, two violinists certainly wouldn't sound like that.
No,
and the
absolutely.
same goes for all the other things. I mean, it's just there's a sort of, there always has to be tension in music, as well as sort of moments of calm. But I mean, I think it's a really positive use of tension. Those particular passages.
Well, the just talking about composition, I mean, the number of parallel fifths in this. I mean, any time if you tried writing that as a student, Vaughan Williams would have had it sent back covered with the red pen. But but at the same time, there is nothing quite like the sound of Vaughan Williams with all of these parallel fifths and cascading fifths. And you were saying there about tension. I'm always saying to Choir of the Earth that music, from our point of view, is about tension and release. In the same way that a heart contracts and then relaxes and contracts and relaxes, and music can always be brought down to that heartbeat. And one of the things that really genuinely made me gasp when I heard the Lark for the first time is the fact that first held chord over which you play your first cadenza, there's tension, release, and then tension. It's a minor seventh chord.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
over the top of this chord, which is not finished, but it's held for so long, your brain is kind of tricked into accepting. And it maybe comes back to what you were saying about Vaughan Williams' experience in the First World War. You know, would he have held it over an unresolved minor seventh chord if he hadn't been through that dark time? I mean, I don't know.
Possibly, well, possibly not. But I think it's also it's going back so far, isn't it? I mean, you've got the sort of folk music influences with the sort of pentatonic melodies where the choir take over the words, for example, which I mean, it's not quite pentatonic, but it's that kind of
Yeah,
thing. But also, I mean, all the parallel fifths. I mean, that is like plain chant, isn't it?
yeah,
It's organum from medieval times,
it
and
is.
it's like it's like sort of, yeah, this extraordinary. I mean, it's a time traveling piece, really, because I mean
Mm,
the violin writing is frequently sort of more advanced than you might expect for 1920, and yet at the same time the piece as a whole, I mean, it's just, it's sort of timeless. It draws on
mm.
so many sort of things from so many different epochs.
As you were saying, I mean, you can imagine Bach would sit and listen to that. He'd recognise a lot of the techniques.
I
He'd
think so, yeah.
recognise a lot of the intent. He might sneer at the use of modes, and although actually, having said that, I mean, he wasn't above using some really quite stunning modal shifts.
Mm.
Which Brandenburg is it that has that unbelievable Phrygian central? I think it might be Brandenburg One.
Mm.
And you kind of go, what? How did
Yeah,
he do that? But this is kind of him following his heart in the same way Vaughan Williams did
yeah,
in this. I'm very very moved by what you said about his experience of the First World War, and we see this across culture. I mean, Tolkien was the same. He was never the same. J.R. Tolkien, when he came back from
sure.
having served, and you know, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, both very much about commenting on the state of the world, and how it was sort of yearning for a time that, as you said, would never come back.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think the Lark is as you say, it's a timeless piece in so many ways. It has a lot to teach us.
It absolutely does, and I think, I mean, the kind of the nation's favourite piece tag. I mean, it could so easily be meaningless, but I think it's absolutely worth it. It's there's so many excellent reasons why it should be. Well,
Yeah.
everybody should hear it.
Well,
Basically,
you were
I'm doing
saying
my
that
best.
you played it for
Yeah.
a schools tour,
Yeah.
and how did the kids take it?
Well, just you could have heard a pin drop, and the gasp that I remember hearing when I finally finished. I mean, that'll stay with me. Can't remember whether it was Yeovil or Barnstaple or somewhere else where quite possibly the Lark had not previously ascended. Yeah, and it's just, yeah, and
Fabulous.
yeah,
So
but
so
they wanted a 3 minute version, and I said, absolutely no way. No, you're getting well. I don't mind making a little cut here and there, but you're definitely getting the whole of the final section, and they did. And yeah,
that's the thing. People, I think, they look at the length of the piece. The old kids can't sit through a 15-minute piece. They'll be
of
fidgeting,
course they can.
and then you show them, you introduce them to the Lark, and suddenly they are wrapped. I have to say, I've heard the first time I heard the Fieri track with your wonderful playing on. It arrived as I was driving in the car with my son in the back and my wife next to me. We were heading off to watch my daughter in a production, and I was driving. I said, "Can you just put it on? I want to have a listen to it." So the first time I heard it was on car speakers,
Mm.
And okay, so it didn't sound as good as it would have done on headphones. It was pretty good, and my 8-year-old son was in the back, and I didn't want to disturb him too much. He was playing on his Nintendo,
Mm.
and within 30 seconds of it starting, he put his Nintendo down. He said, "Turn it up, please, Dad." So I turned it up, and on we drove, and he was absolutely riveted by the piece. He wanted to know. He would call out at times, "What are they saying?" And so I would share with him the words of the poem.
Mm.
And I said, "This is about a lark. I can hear it flying." And at the end, that last section, that gorgeous cadenza, it finished, and he sat in silence as we're driving along. Sat in silence for a minute after it finished. He said, "That was a really good piece." And bearing in mind, this is an 8-year-old boy
Like,
who, you know,
sorry.
with the
Yeah.
typical
Yeah.
attention span of an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
he absolutely adored it. And one other thing, just quickly, when we were premiering the piece for the choir today, and there'll be people in the choir who go, "Don't tell him this, Ben, don't tell him this." But a few people came along and said, "I'm coming to listen. I'm not sure. It's not my favourite piece." And I've had several messages from people who have said, "I'm converted. I adore it."
Oh,
And so, I mean, this is the impact
that's it.
of what you've done for us, and what we're doing together. Really is sharing this piece and introducing it in a new way to people who otherwise wouldn't get to hear it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so huge thanks to you, Charles.
Well,
We can't thank you enough. And one of the things we will hopefully get to do, because we're going to end up with so many different versions of this when it's finished. I was saying to Mark, we obviously have the piano and violin version, which nobody outside the production team have heard, but is absolutely
sure.
marvelous.
Yeah.
We have the version with Fieri and yourself, which of course
Yeah.
the world is now listening to.
Hmm.
In a couple of months' time, we will have the version with Fieri, yourself, and the choir. We also, just rather cheekily, because we can, usually ask the choir to sing the solos as well, because we can mix it all. So we'll have a
Okay.
version with the choir singing all the solo parts as well, so fully choral. And then
Wow.
ultimately down the line, if we wanted to, we could come up with some kind of new mix where there's piano, choir, Fieri. I mean, the
Gosh,
options
yes, I
are
hope so. Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
endless. So yes, the Lark is going to continue to ascend,
Wow.
and
That's incredible.
so
Wow.
looking forward to it. And of course, the premiere of the final version will be in the autumn, alongside the other 2 weeks of summer school music that we've
Excellent.
been learning and recording. And I don't know if you're aware, but we've done a week of Eric Whittaker's choral
Yeah.
music, which is sublime. And
Yeah.
over the last couple of weeks, we've learned some opera choruses, including the Easter hymn from Cavalleria Rusticana,
Cool.
some Gilbert and Sullivan,
Yeah.
Purcell with Drooping Wings, which of
Yeah.
course I think Purcell and Vaughan Williams, there's a lot of overlap there,
Totally.
and a gorgeous brand new arrangement, a choral arrangement of Nessun Dorma, which, do you know what? It was Richard Gowers who arranged that for us. And so your
Wow.
Lark is going to be amongst Eric Whittaker's music and all of this
Yeah.
opera, and I think it's going to actually be one of the most beautiful concerts we've put on.
It's just the most extraordinary project. I'm just thrilled to be
Well,
part of it. Yeah.
huge thanks to you, Charles. We really appreciate you not just being our Lark, but spending some time with us this evening. Thank you so much for talking
Great
with us.
pleasure.
And we will see you again for the mix. And we, of course, we'll let you know when the concert is. Do come along and have a chat with the choir in the comments. They're a very friendly bunch, and they'll be delighted to see the Lark in amongst them.
I'll
But
look forward to it.
in the
Yeah.
meantime, I shall bid you adieu, and thanks ever so much again.
Great. Thanks, Ben.